Thank you. Today is Thursday, February 12th, 2026. It is 3 p.m. We are at
Recording in progress.
And the recording's in progress. We'll start that again. Today is a public meeting, Thursday, February 12th, 2026. It's 3 p.m. This public meeting is held under Section 34 of the Planning Act, is declared open. The applications on the public meeting agenda today are for the public consultation purposes only and will be addressed at future council meetings. No decision is being made on these applications today. All those present in at this public meeting in person or on Zoom, and we have quite a few on Zoom today, will have an opportunity to speak in favor or in opposition to the applications. And any and all comments and information submitted, whether orally or in writing, including identifying information, become part of the public record and could be made publicly available at any point, including on the Township's website and other electronic forms of publication in accordance with the Planning Act requirements. At this time, I will ask staff to please describe the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment related to file number Zulu Bravo 2606.1, submitted by Margaret Williams and Steve Seaman, and summarize any written comments received. Planner, please.
Thank you.
Kristen, thank you.
So this zoning bylaw amendment application today, which has file number ZB 2606.1, is related to lands known as 19 and 58 Siemens Lane. The application is a condition of consent for a lot addition whereby approximately 1.37 acres will be severed from 19 Siemens Lane and added to 58 Siemens Lane. As part of that lot addition, 2 existing trailer sites will formally become part of the campground property. To reflect this change, the retained lands, which is 19 Siemens Lane, will be rezoned to the from the tourist commercial zone to the rural zone to permit only residential uses. And that tourist commercial exception 3 zone, which is the zone that's already applied to 58 Siemens Lane, will be amended to recognize the formerly expanded lands, so the lands being added to, in addition to recognizing the additional 2 trailer sites for a total of 15. The zoning amendment would also acknowledge the long-established location of certain trailers and cabins that do not currently meet setback requirements, and this would ensure that their legal status is maintained following the lot line adjustment. We've received no formal written comments to date. We have received internal agency comments to our request for comment back from the County of Renfrew and our chief building official, who both indicated that they had no comments or concerns.
Thank you. Does the applicant or their representative wish to speak in regards to this application? Not at this time. Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak in relation to the amendment? If so, please raise your hand to be called, and when invited, please come forward, state your name, address for the record. You will have a maximum of 5 minutes to provide your comments. We ask that once the first speaker has presented, any subsequent speakers limit their remarks to new concerns or comments that have not already been raised. This will ensure that distinct comments are heard and the discussion remains focused. Do we have anybody? If you would please come forward to the microphone. Yep. Microphone, just turn it on so it goes green, and then state your name and address, please. Yep. You can just have a seat there.
Sit?
Yep.
All right, this is a first for me. Good afternoon, everyone. We have a property.
Could you just state your name and address first?
Yes.
Thank you.
Johanna Oling, 230 Kennedy Road. We have a property, we have a house, cottage that borders on the lands that you just identified on 2 sides. And we are wondering what the impact of that will be on our property. The idea that there may be several trailers in that area will impact significantly on our land. Noise, garbage, it has been used for waste disposal in the past. We will not have the peace and quiet that we expect we will get as as landowners, and we wondered if there is anything that we could do about this.
Thank you. Your comments and concerns have been taken down, and our planner is here, and we'll make note of them. At these public meetings, it's not a back and forth. It's to get your comments.
May I ask one more question?
Sure.
I would like to know what the intent of that land is for the future. I know that now it is, I've learned from Kristen that the purpose is to remove a couple of trailers from that property. However, what is the intent of this big piece of land for the future? And my thinking is that it could very well be to populate it with a lot of trailers. And that is our big concern, because we border, as I said before, on two sides of the property.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any other comments today? No? Is there somebody on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see your name. It's Kevin something, but if you could identify yourself and then speak, please.
Certainly. My name is Kevin Mutter. I'm a planner and senior project manager with JP2G. So I assisted the applicants with the zoning bylaw amendment and the subsequent site plan that would be coming to council in the future. The trailers and cabins have been in existence on this property for at least 30 years. The cabin's probably 50 years. So the intent is not to increase the density that is already there. It's just a matter of realigning the limits of a campground to accommodate the two trailers that are on the existing house lot and put them into the campground. So the current zoning limits the campground to 13 trailer sites, and as Kristen mentioned in her introduction, the addition of these two would make it would limit to 15. So hopefully that may alleviate the neighbors some of the neighbors' concerns.
Thank you. Sorry, you have a follow-up?
Yes. But my concern is not the two trailers on that property now. That doesn't really bother us. It's two trailers on a very large lot. My concern is what is the future for this, what will be a vacant lot. And so I guess maybe that's not an issue that can be addressed at this meeting, but it is definitely a concern for us as property owners abutting on two sides of that land.
Okay, thank you. And we will take your comments into considerations and their representative as well from J2PG. No, that's said that wrong. From you guys. Thank you. Is there any further comments from the public? I just taking time to make sure there's nothing on Zoom. Doesn't appear so. We're okay. If there are no further comments from the public, I will now move forward to the next application. At this time, I will ask staff to please describe the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment related to file Zulu Bravo 2506.11 submitted by Christine McQuay, I believe, on behalf of Heather Crawley, and summarize any written comments received. Planner. Is this Ashley on Zoom, I believe? Or somewhere?
Yep, I'm here.
There we are. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, we're just going to let the PowerPoint jump on here quickly. Perfect. Awesome. We'll just go right into the next slide, please. Awesome. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here and for taking the time to participate in this process. We also want to acknowledge those who have submitted written comments in advance. Your feedback forms an important part of the public record. So tonight, as the mayor has mentioned, we are hosting a public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment application for the Stones Lake Resort and Spa lands. This is a statutory planning process governed by the Planning Act, which essentially establishes how zoning applications are reviewed and how the public are notified and how council ultimately makes a decision at the end. So my name, just for your information, is Ashley Belitto, and I've been retained by the Township of Greater Madawaska to provide an independent planning opinion on this application. As part of that work, a comprehensive planning report has been prepared and was attached to the agenda. And that report reviewed the relevant legislation and policy framework, including the Planning Act, the Provincial Planning Statement, the County of Renfrew Official Plan, and the Township Zoning Bylaw. So it assesses whether the proposal is consistent with and conforms to those documents. At this stage, there is no recommendation for council, as was previously stated. This is intentional. This is a statutory public meeting, and the purpose tonight is to hear from the public. Those of you who have been living here and bringing lived experience, history, knowledge of the area, which cannot be captured in the technical reports alone. So before any recommendations formulated, it's important that your voices are heard and considered as part of this overall evaluation. So as part of this presentation, I will walk through the zoning amendment process, including a brief explanation on what a holding provision means, outline where we are in the timeline, and describe what the next steps will be. We are going to open up the floor for comments, and the applicant's consulting team is here to provide further details on the project and studies to address some of the concerns that have been raised thus far. So I'll just jump into the next slide. So before we get into the details of this proposal, I just wanted to quickly explain the process we are required to follow, because I think there's a bit of confusion here on what that process looks like. So a zoning bylaw amendment is governed by the Planning Act. This legislation sets out very specific steps and timelines and notification requirements that municipalities must follow. This file began with pre-consultation several months ago, which is generally required before a formal application can be submitted. And during that stage, staff and agencies identify what studies and supporting materials are needed before an application can be accepted. So once a formal application is submitted by an applicant, it remains confidential until it is reviewed for completeness. So under the Planning Act, the municipality has 30 days to determine whether an application is complete. And only once it's deemed complete does the formal review timeline begin, and the application can be circulated and publicly noticed. Once the application is deemed complete, the application is circulated to prescribed agencies and stakeholders that are referenced in the Planning Act, and notice is also provided to individuals within a 120-meter radius as required under the Act. So that is something that has come up, and kind of get into some of those comments that we received later on, but the statutory requirement is that 120-meter radius from the property. So given the magnitude and public interest associated with this proposal, staff did go above and beyond the statutory minimum requirements by also posting notice on the township's website and social media platforms. So while the Planning Act required a minimum 20-day notice period before the public meeting, the township that 120-meter distance, the township did make efforts to broaden awareness beyond the technical mailing radius. So we do understand that 20 days can feel limited, particularly for proposal of this scale. However, these timelines are prescribed under provincial legislation. So just getting into that statutory decision timeline, that's essentially, we're going to host the public meeting and then eventually have to bring this bylaw for consideration. The Planning Act also imposes timelines on municipalities to make decisions within a 90-day time frame once that application is deemed complete. So the 90-day clock began once completeness was confirmed and runs through to when council passes a bylaw to either approve or refuse that amendment. So we are currently at that statutory public meeting stage, which is highlighted in orange, and the purpose tonight is to hear from the public and receive additional information. So following this meeting, staff will consider the comments received, review any additional information required, and prepare a recommendation report for council so that a decision can be made within the legislated timeframe. We'll go to the next slide. So as previously stated, this meeting is being held as part of a statutory requirement under the Planning Act for a zoning bylaw amendment application. The purpose is to not make a decision tonight, as we've heard over and over again now. It is to ensure that council hears from the public before any decision is made. So the Planning Act requires that a public meeting is held to provide an opportunity for any person to speak to the application, ask questions, and provide comments, whether in support, opposing, or seeking clarification. It's about gathering information, and council does benefit from hearing about the local knowledge of the site and the surrounding area, the historical context that may not be captured in technical reports, the community priorities and concerns, and questions about how the proposal may just function in practice. So technical studies and policy analysis are important, but the lived experience and local perspective is equally important when we're starting to shape a complete planning opinion. So it's definitely taken into account when we're making our recommendations to council. So in terms of how the input is used, all comments received, both written and verbal, form part of the public record. So following this meeting, staff and the consulting team will review the feedback. Any new issues raised will be assessed against that Planning Act, the provincial planning statement, and the county official plan. And where appropriate, additional clarification may be requested from the applicant. It's only after considering all that information that a recommendation is brought forward to council. All right, we'll get into the next slide. And next slide again. Perfect, thank you. So when the application was first submitted, it included a hotel component at a greater height and a different overall unit mix. So I just wanted to bring some attention to that, as the notice would have said one thing, and now we're at this meeting, we're sort of dealing with a couple little tweaks. So since that time, we have been advised that there's been some refinements to the concept. So most notably, the things we wanted to highlight was that the proposed hotel height has been reduced from the original requested 36 meters to 24 meters. The overall number of hotel units was reduced from 200 to 150, and the number of private cabins increased from 10 to 30. So these changes reflect ongoing refinement of the concept as design work progresses. What I do want to highlight here is that the environmental protection zone areas are intended to remain unchanged. So there's no intention to construct within the EP zones, nor within the required 30-meter buffers surrounding those areas. And the environmental impact study did identify the relevant natural features and recommended appropriate setbacks for protection. And those areas are proposed to remain in their natural state and will continue to be protected through zoning buffers and future planning applications, such as the site plan control agreement. We can talk about that a bit later. So just wanted that to be clear. The idea here is not to remove any environmental protected zoned lands at this stage. It is strictly dealing with the rural, moving to that tourist commercial exception holding zone. So the other thing I wanted to highlight here was the purpose of the zoning amendment. The precise unit breakdown does not necessarily need to be finalized at this stage. What council is being asked to consider is whether the proposed use is appropriate in principle. The exact number and configuration of hotel rooms, cabins, and internal amenities may change, and it's directly going to be related to the hydrogeological and servicing studies that are going to get finalized if we move forward. The environmental constraints are further refined, and detailed engineering progresses, and MECP approval is secured. So if council does go ahead and approve this bylaw or this amendment, all of those studies that take place at a later date may change what that composition looks like. So those studies may result in further adjustments to ensure full compliance with servicing capacity, environmental protection requirements, and regulatory approvals. So just getting into the holding provision really quickly here. The holding provision is proposed on the lands, and this means that even if the application is supported and the bylaw is passed by council, development cannot proceed and building permits cannot be issued until all required technical studies are completed to the township's satisfaction and council formally removes the holding provision. So at the point where the applicants are requesting permission to remove the holding provision, that generally happens once all those studies have taken place and they've got it to a point where they feel it's adequate to be considered. Council will review the final detailed site plan through site plan control process. And that will include, the building placements and the number of units, the confirmed setbacks, the servicing design, the grading and drainage, and the environmental mitigated measures. And so just to highlight that there's another layer of review before anything moves forward on the ground. And just as another step, we are also intending to have all of those studies peer reviewed again by qualified individuals to make sure that the information that's in there has been double checked, T's crossed, I's dotted, just to make sure that the public, it's protected from a public health and safety perspective and servicing capacity perspective. So just getting into the actual proposal here. So the intent here is to create a resort hotel building, private cabins, a commercial entertainment hub, a pedestrian-oriented plaza, a spa component, and walking trails and passive recreation areas. So these elements are intended to function as an integrated destination-based tourism development within that rule designation. The submission also included several studies, the environmental impact study, the stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessments, the preliminary hydrogeological study, and the preliminary site servicing study, and then conceptual site plans and supporting materials. Several of these studies were peer-reviewed on behalf of the township, and comments were provided to the applicant. These peer review comments form part of the holding provision requirements that are in the draft bylaw that will get considered at a later date, meaning they must be addressed to the township's satisfaction before development can proceed. There was 2 other studies that I wanted to mention here as to why they weren't required, as it did come up as a comment in some of the correspondence we've received to date. A traffic impact study and the market impact study. These were not required as part of the submission. So with respect to traffic, at this stage, the proposal represents a destination-based tourism use accessed from an existing public road in a rural context. We did reach out to the county to establish whether or not they felt a traffic impact study would be warranted, as it is a county road, and they did not see the need at this time. They did say that detailed review would occur once an entrance permit is proposed, and at that time they would figure out the entrance design, sightlines, and any potential upgrades that would need to occur through that process, so not part of the zoning process. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be taken into account, it's just going to be taken into account at a later date. And in terms of the market impact study, the official plan allows the municipality to require one where it's considered necessary. And in this case, staff and the county did have a conversation about this, but we did not identify the need for one. The reason being here is that the resort is not structured as a retail commercial node. It's not going to be competing with the downtown or established commercial hierarchy. It is primarily an accommodation and tourism-based use serving on-site guests. That's consistent with the county's policy direction to promote tourism and economic diversification in the rural areas. So as you importantly, as some of you have noted in the comments received to date, some of those studies, particularly the hydrogeological and servicing, are preliminary in nature at this stage, and again, that is intentional. The idea is that those more detailed designs will come at a later date. So the draft bylaw, just to kind of get in this really quickly before we jump into consistency and compatibility, it introduces the holding provision, which means that even if council approves the zoning in principle, development can't proceed until a final site plan application is submitted and deemed complete, a detailed hydrogeological study is completed in the township satisfaction, a servicing study is finalized and approved by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. And recently, we did add a few more here based on the comments that we've received so far from other stakeholders, the peer reviewers, or public comments, and that includes some assurity regarding fire suppression and the concerns the fire chief raised and making sure that those are addressed, and that all peer review comments related to the environmental impact study are resolved. So again, just to reiterate, council's not considering the approval of construction drawings tonight, or in the even at the next stage, that's not part of what we're looking at right now. Council is considering whether the proposal can proceed in principle, subject to those very specific technical safeguards. So to put it in another way, the question before council is not whether every detail is finalized, it is whether, assuming the required studies confirm that the site can be developed safely, responsibly, and in accordance with policy and regulations, is that proposal appropriate to move forward to the next stage of review, which includes detailed design. Okay, so we'll get into the planning consistency tests here. We'll go to the next slide. And I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty of this report and encourage anyone to take a look at it if they wish. But I will highlight a bit about the actual assessment. So when council considers a zoning bylaw amendment, the decision is not based on personal preference or whether someone simply likes or dislikes the proposal. Planning decisions have to be grounded in what we call like a planning consistency test, and it's established under the Planning Act. So the way I try to introduce this or explain it is that there's essentially three primary tests that apply. So first, under the Planning Act, council must have regard to matters of provincial interest. And this includes a broad range of things like protection of ecological systems, appropriate servicing, public health and safety, economic well-being, compatibility of land uses, climate resilience. So this proposal has been reviewed against those matters, and the technical studies submitted and intended to form part of detailed design if the application is approved. All of these things are intended to address those provincial interests directly. So it sort of meets this test. The idea is that the technical studies will ensure that all of those provincial interests are maintained. Second, council must ensure that any decision is consistent with the provincial planning statement. So the provincial planning statement provides policy direction for various things, but specific to this application: rural areas, tourism development, natural heritage protection, water protection, servicing hierarchy, natural hazards, and climate change. The planning report that I did attach to the agenda walks through those sections in detail and assesses how the proposal aligns with each applicable policy. At this stage, the studies indicate that environmental features are being retained, that shoreline protections are being respected by ensuring that buffer, and that servicing feasibility is being evaluated in accordance with provincial standards. Further refinements of these studies are needed, and that's been made clear even in the peer review comments and with some of the conversations that we've been having with some of the residents. And that's to ensure that the appropriate safeguards are put in place before that removal of the holding provision. Third, council must ensure that the proposal conforms to the county's official plan. So the subject lands are designated rural. The designation permits tourism-related development subject to detailed criteria, including environmental protection, servicing suitability, buffering, shoreline integrity, and phased development through holding provisions. So the amendment before council is structured to align with those policies and to require further technical confirmation prior to a building permit being issued. Importantly, the conformity does not mean that every design detail is finalized again tonight or within the next couple of weeks while we try to bring something for council to consider. It means that based on the information currently available, the proposal can meet the policy framework that governs this plan, subject to conditions, further detailed study and agency approvals. So ultimately, council's task, once the bylaw is brought to them for consideration, is to determine whether the application meets those three tests. Does it have regard to provincial interest? Is it consistent with the provincial planning statement? And does it conform to the county's official plan? Next slide. So I'm now going to go through several themes that have come up as part of the written comments received. I do apologize if there are some that I have missed. There was quite a few that did come in within the last 24 hours that I haven't been able to, the preparation of this presentation obviously was done before the last 24 hours. So if there are some in there that I've missed, by all means, we will make sure that council gets the actual comment and is able to read through that. And then the next report that we provide to council will highlight some of these other things that may have come up since then. We're also in the right forum to raise those issues. So if there is something that I'm not highlighting as part of the feedback, that's great. If you're able to come to the mic after and voice those concerns, we'll be taking great notes, and we will be addressing those concerns between the consultants and staff as we move forward. All right, so just we're going to go through these one by one just so that hopefully it captures what's been said so far. So residents did raise concerns about the adequacy of the notification period, and that we did hear that time and time again, that they indicated that insufficient time to review the technical material and provide informed feedback. Several speakers expressed concerns about transparency in the process and requested that the public meeting be postponed until outstanding studies were completed and made available. I'm hoping that the breakdown that I provided explains why we're in the situation we're in and trying to meet those statutory obligations. Obviously, there's more to it than being able to kind of have this open and available for everyone to comment on for for a long period of time, if we were trying to meet those provincial requirements. So there was also a strong desire for an opportunity to review and discuss any revised plans or amendments once those studies were finalized. So once the holding provision is being requested to be removed, what does that process look like? The information is going to be coming back to council. The studies will be brought back for public or be available as a public resource. So there's going to be that opportunity later as well. There just won't be a set public meeting. Yeah, I think that was all I wanted to highlight on that one. Yes, so yeah, essentially highlighting that it's not our last opportunity to review and that the appropriate safeguards, in my opinion, are in place to ensure that it is done thoroughly and properly. The second was environmental protection and natural heritage. So a significant number of comments focused on potential impacts to Stones Lake and the surrounding natural features, the loss of reduction of those environmental protection zones. And as you recall, I mentioned earlier that there is no loss to the zone specifically. There's also concern about encroachment into wetland boundaries during construction, the adequacy of shoreline setbacks, and pressure on sensitive shoreline ecosystems and fisheries. So these comments have been forwarded to the consultants, and there was some elements of this addressed in the peer review comments, and it is forming part of an extra condition for the holding provision to be removed at a later date. The third was the water resources servicing and hydrogeology. Residents expressed concern about water quantity and quality, including where wastewater and gray water would be treated and whether a water impact study had been undertaken, and the potential volume of water being drawn from the lake, the impact on wells. Several speakers questioned the adequacy and completeness of site servicing studies and hydrogeological studies, and noting that they are preliminary in nature and didn't provide sufficient information. There's also concerns raised about stormwater management and the adequacy of sewage treatment facilities. So again, this again, we recognize that the studies so far were done preliminarily in nature. The idea here is that will be, if council were to approve this application, this is something that would be considered as part of the holding provisions. Scale, intensity, and community character was another one that came up. So there was many comments characterized the proposal as a significant over-intensification of land use that could conflict with the existing rural environmental character of the area. The concern was raised about the number of units that were being proposed and the associated commercial and entertainment uses. There was also some issues about bedrock stability and groundwater and scale and layout. The scale and layout piece is going to be something that gets ironed out through detailed design and also form part of the site plan control agreement process. So it will be taken into account. But yes, we hear that comment and that concern as part of this process. The fifth was infrastructure, emergency services, and safety. So residents questioned whether the existing emergency services, including firefighting capacity, were sufficient to support a large multi-story development. Concerns were also raised regarding geological suitability, slope stability, flood risks, and long-term operational safety. Questions were also raised about who would be responsible for enforcement if development were to encroach within that 30-meter shoreline setback. And there was also some concerns related to waste transfer stations and the ability to hold the waste that would be generated from this facility. So absolutely legitimate concerns. And again, these are intended to form part of the holding provision and clarifying these before we remove that holding provision. The enforcement of the 30-meter shoreline setback is the responsibility of the township, and it would form part of the enforcement underneath the zoning bylaw. The Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks can also be contacted should there be any concerns, issues, concerns or issues that arise after the fact as well. Traffic access and lake use were also mentioned. There was expressed concern about traffic and access safety and the lack of clarity around transportation analysis. Several residents raised objections to the use of Stones Lake as part of the project, including the introduction of a boat launch or increased power watercraft activity. and pressure on recreational uses. There was some requests that came in to permanently restrict power watercrafts to protect lake health and shoreline character. Again, these restrictions on the lake are certainly something that council can invoke, but I would say that that's something that should be looked at separately from the application, as it would involve other property owners as well. Consistency and reliability of the technical studies. So multiple comments came in identifying some contradictions between the submitted studies, including discrepancies between engineering and biological assessments related to slopes and servicing and fishery considerations and species at risk protections. There was also some concern that the preliminary nature of the studies did not provide a reliable basis for decision making, and that the assumptions had not been sufficiently tested. And again, these are things that are or would be forming part of that next stage should the application be approved. Noise incompatibility with adjacent uses was also raised, specifically to the impact on Calabogie Motorsport Park. Requests were made for specific conditions, including formal Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks Class 4 area designation and registrations of warning clauses on title, building level noise mitigation commitments, and a peer review of any noise impact study be completed here. So again, this is a valid concern, and if needed, it could also form part of the holding provision removal requirements. Long-term certainty and phasing was also raised as an issue. Residents expressed concern that the approved development concept or business model could change over time, and that included some uncertainty about the viability of certain proposed uses, lack of information regarding future phases, and whether subsequent development could proceed without adequate oversight. And here we just wanted to highlight that the changes to site plan, if approved and after the fact, would require further amendments to a site plan control agreement. It is a staff level approval, and it is essentially what we would do is confirm that whatever is being proposed has the necessary studies and is properly backed up to be able to support that any future development on the site. Also, if one of the uses doesn't fall within the list of permitted uses within that zone, there's also that requirement for another zoning bylaw amendment should that come up. There was also some quite a few comments that came in that were in support of the application, recognizing that several residents expressed optimism about the project's potential benefits, including increased tourism, job creation, spin-off business opportunities, support for existing local enterprises, and enhancements of the community's profile as a destination. So these comments acknowledge the project's potential to contribute positively to the local economy if appropriately designed and managed. So I will leave it at that. I know that was quite lengthy, but there were so many issues and concerns that came in from the residents over the last 20 days since this notice has been circulated that we really wanted to try and explain, why the process is what it is, why the township staff handled it the way they did, and try to highlight some of or respond to some of the concerns that have generally been seen so far. So with that, I'm going to pass this back over to the mayor, and I believe Christine is going to take over from here to present a little bit more about the proposal and address some of the questions and concerns that have come up so far for the applicant.
Thank you, Ashley. Now, was Christine going to be speaking now, or? I believe so. I'm just trying to figure out where we are on that huge Zoom screen.
Hello, Christine McQuaig here.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Christine, thank you.
Just point of clarification, is the presentation going to be shared on your end, or would you like me to share my screen?
I will defer to, you can share your screen, please.
Okie dokie. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you all here, both virtually and in person. Note that we greatly appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day to attend this meeting. My name is Christine McQuaig. I'm a land use planning consultant working with the applicants for the Stones Lake Resort and Spa. As already noted, we're here to discuss a zoning amendment with a holding for a tourism commercial proposal. Here with me today are the owners of the land, Heather and Rick. They're there in person. And we also have the following members of our project team online virtually. One of the architects, Patrick Bisson, Nick with O2 for landscape design, Guillaume and Brad, who are the engineers working on this file, Andreas, who is our Hydro-G expert, and Zach with environmental. So it's our intent today to give you all some more information, to clarify some information. Ashley went into great length about the process, which is fantastic. I will touch a little bit on that as well as it's in my presentation, and hopefully to answer the questions that you have. Just moving on to the next slide. So the subject lands, as you're well aware, is located on the north side of Stones Lake at the west end. It is south of Calabogie Village off of the 511, which is Lanark Road. At a closer view, the entire parcel here is shown in black. It does wrap around the western tip of the Stones Lake, which is about a little over 4 kilometers long. Contextually speaking, the site is located near a number of kind of well-known destinations in the Calabogie area, the Calabogie Motorsports, the ski hill, the village, the K&P Trail. It's no secret that Calabogie has, seen a significant tourist draw over the years, becoming a more notable location for the people to engage in recreation and relaxation. I myself have a cottage in the area as well, so I'm in Calabogie pretty frequently. Unfortunately, not today because I wouldn't have made it there in time with previous appointments, but I know it very well, and I love Calabogie, and so just to provide some assurances that, I did not present my planning opinion having never been there, having, no experience of the area and the lands. I'm very familiar with it. So there's been a few misconceptions about the size of the development relative to the lake. So I just wanted to show an image that kind of demonstrates the scale of the proposal with the showing the size of the lake. So outlined in red, I don't know if my cursor is visible on the screen, but outlined in red is roughly the area where the zoning would apply. And then we've kind of inserted the site plan into that area. So the gray lines are the roads and the sort of black dots would be the proposed buildings. And so that just gives you an appreciation for sort of the scale relative to the lake itself. So I want to go over kind of where we're at, and I know Ashley touched on this, but I know a lot of this information is new and something a lot of people may not be familiar with. So I think it's important to make sure that everyone is fully aware of the whole process and where we're at. So all legislative timelines have been followed, as Ashley has stated, and that's a requirement under the Planning Act. We are still very much in the early stages of the development approval process. We submitted our zoning amendment in the fall. It was internally circulated, and now we're at the public meeting stage, which is where, we want to hear from you. We want to get your comments, and this is sort of like a two-way street. Rick and Heather, they're part of the community, and so they want to hear your comments and hear your questions. So comments from this meeting will be reviewed and discussed, and we'll make adjustments as needed. After this, the application for zoning would then proceed to council. After that, there's still the entire site plan control process. And one thing that Ashley didn't touch on that I think is important to comment is that site plan control approvals do have conditions attached to that approval, and that is forms part of the sort of enforcement mechanism to make sure that whatever approvals, there are conditions in place to make sure that they're upheld. So at the point when the reports reflect a more detailed level of design, with that material, we can proceed to lifting to the holding. And it's at that point that the holding is then decided by council. And so it does have to go back to council. Even still, there are ministry approvals that are needed, as well as building permits. So there's many steps along the journey and many professionals that are involved that are preparing these documents, and many other professionals that are involved in reviewing them. So not only does the township review materials, but the ministry will also review materials. And so it's really important for that to, for people to be aware of that. It's just moving on to the next slide. So Ashley did take you through the amendment details. We do want to reconfirm we are not amending the environmental protection zone. We are only amending the rural zone and converting it to a tourist commercial holding zone. The maximum height is proposed at 24 meters, and this would be to accommodate a 5-story hotel building, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Minimum parking spaces for the site would be 500, and minimum loading spaces would be 2. So as Ashley had stated, there are holding provisions that would apply to the zoning that would proceed to council. And the conditions of that holding would be that a site plan control is approved, a detailed hydrogeological report, and a site servicing study that addresses both serviceability as well as fire suppression. The peer review response submission would have to go back in. And then subsequent discussions with staff, we will also look at doing a noise study to determine whether class 4 would be required. In class 4, I mean, we can talk about that if anybody has questions, but it's a specific classification under the kind of ministry's noise guidelines to look at situations in where there is sensitive uses near noise generating uses. And so we can answer questions on that if they come up. So I want to take a minute to review some of the misinformation that's arose prior to the meeting. Like we said, there will be no recreational use of the lake. There will be no speedboats, powerboats, anything like that. So the Nordic Spa is meant to view the lake as a visual amenity, and that's all. When the application was submitted, the concepts at that time were high level. And so the proposed height in the units at that time were a bit conservative to allow for that flexibility as we move through design. So now that we've started the more detailed design, we can confirm that the number of the units of the hotel are currently proposed to be 150. The number of cabins are proposed to be 30. So in other words, we've shifted the balance between the two and reduced the overall number of units. And as I said, the height will be a maximum of 24 meters and 5 stories. For water usage of the lake, ministry approvals are required, which necessitates very detailed reports and studies. And I can assure that there's many layers of review and approvals, and all of the environmental setbacks are being maintained. So zoning applications and approvals are often based on conceptual plans and high-level reports. Holding provisions which are permitted under the Planning Act are included commonly in zoning approvals to ensure and provide council that oversight as the project moves through more detailed stages, such as site plan control. So this area in yellow is the area that is subject to the rezoning. It's particularly the light gray area. So the dark gray area currently represents the environmental protection zones that the township has. We are not planning to rezone those. We're only planning to rezone the light gray area within that yellow boundary. Now I'm just going to flip between the next slide, which is essentially the same, but I've plugged in the proposed development and the buildings and the parking and the structure just to show it relative to the area that's being rezoned, because we want to relay that the area that's being disturbed represents about 9% of the area being rezoned, and specifically about 12.5 acres. So there we go. So that's sort of the exact same image, just with the proposed development overlaid. So you can kind of see how it fits into the area of lands that are being rezoned. So I'll just flip to the next slide, which, there we go. So I want to walk you through the next 3 slides, which will go over the proposed development and show you a little bit more of the more updated plans that we have. So this is a view of the overall development, the gravel parking area here, private cabins, the 150 unit hotel, the amenities and sort of that pedestrian court area, and then the Nordic Spa towards the lake. So some of the amenities, as we discussed, would be the Nordic Spa, a wine bank, perhaps a distillery, some mini retail, entertainment venue, and a restaurant. And as well, the site is expected to have some sort of passive recreational opportunities for not just the people who are attending the hotel and spa, but also for the public. So this is a bit of a zoomed in view of the proposed plan at this time. And it is showing more clearly the setback from the lake, some of the private cabins, the 150 unit hotel, which is proposed to be 5 stories. I do want to note that the 5 stories may not necessarily apply to every portion of the hotel's massing. It's the intent to have a very articulated design that complements the natural setting and will include the use of natural materials. And so on the next slide, so on this image, we kind of zoomed in to the section of the plan that's a little bit further north. And I know it's a little bit confusing north because I'm moving down, but the plan's oriented sort of in reverse. But this shows the gravel parking area as well as sort of that distillery, entertainment, retail, pedestrian court that will flank the entrance going towards the hotel. And then the main section of cabins, as well as a private on-site treatment facility. So the next few slides I'm going to show, the design is still in progress, but we wanted to share some inspiration images that were sourced or AI generated just to give you an idea of the expectation for design and sort of the overall design intent that Rick and Heather are looking for the site. So I'm going to flip through some images, and then while I'm flipping through the images, I also want to say that though the site plan control process, which has not been submitted yet, does not require a public meeting, we do want to ensure open communication with the public and the residents of Calabogie. So as design continues and as more detailed designs are prepared, both in terms of the design of the buildings itself, but also the more infrastructure related design components, we'd like to propose the idea of having a subsequent applicant-led public meeting during the site plan control process so that we can update everybody, so that we can provide you with new information as we move through this process. That's just some more images. And then I know Ashley touched on this as well. But of course, in order to support the zoning amendment with the holding, we do have to review the applicable policy, both at the provincial level, the county level, and the township level. The proposal in its current configuration reflects policy in the provincial planning statement that does encourage tourism to support the economy through leveraging of rural amenities as well as natural assets. In accordance with the provincial planning statement, all environmental setbacks are being respected, and the recommendations in the environmental impact statement will be enforced both as part of site plan control as well as through ministry permits. So this is a large parcel, and I know there was some confusion about grading, which I can touch on, but the majority of the site is flat. So the distinction between the 2 reports that had arisen, like I said, the majority of the site is relatively flat. However, when the environmental report looks at things, they want to discuss, at what point is there a highest elevation and at what point is there a lowest elevation. It doesn't mean that the overall grade is drastically steep across the whole lot. They were just comparing sort of 2 points across the whole property. But that's stated for stormwater management purposes. It is relatively flat across the site. So that's something that I did want to clarify. But being that it's a large parcel with no major grading challenges and where there is this natural asset that we can utilize as a visual amenity but not recreational use, it makes it a highly appropriate location for the development of a tourism proposal. So as I stated, the zoning application is the first step in a longer process. They do generally reflect more conceptual plans and high-level servicing details. It's common in these instances to use holding provisions to necessitate that more detailed information that will rise from the site plan control process and therefore tie it back to zoning and provide that council oversight. Zoning applications don't typically require detailed information to be considered complete. From a planning perspective, the proposed zoning with its holding is consistent with a provincial planning statement. It conforms to the county official plan, and it does meet the intent and purpose of the tourist commercial zone. The next slide I wanted to review is the environmental piece. So there have been, as Ashley stated, many environmental questions, and we do have Mr. Zachary Anderson from Gemtech here to respond to questions, but just some high-level notes. As we stated, and hopefully everyone's aware of this now, but the EP zone is going to remain unchanged. All the 30-meter setbacks are going to be respected, and the impacts to the environment are expected to be minor and mitigatable. Those mitigation measures in the environmental impact statement report will be implemented, and that implementation is enforced, as I said, through the site plan control approval conditions, but also through ministry approvals. And the study concluded that from their environmental impact assessment, they did not expect significant residual impacts anticipated for the proposed development. So for water and sanitary, the stormwater is intended to be controlled to the 100-year flood event level. The resort will have its own sanitary treatment facility, and all sanitary will be gravity fed to this facility, which will completely treat the water. These systems do exist, and they are intended for these types of developments in these rural settings. We do have an expert on the call who can answer any questions related to that as well. Water is intended to be provided via a combination of wells and intake from the lake. Again, additional detailed reporting is required to review the details of both of these systems and ensure that they can support the proposed development, hence the holding provision. They are also required for the site plan control submission. It should also be noted that the ministry approvals are required. So in addition to the township approval level, there is still that ministry that has to review these particular components of the proposal. So just want to flip to the list of our names so that everybody knows who's who. I know this has been a lot of information, and between my presentation and Ashley's presentation, it's been a lot of listening, but hopefully some information that we've provided did correct a little bit of the misinformation that was out there and reflects the most recent concept. We're happy to take questions, and hopefully we've got all the right experts here to address those questions. Like I said, this is one step in a longer process, and just we want to ensure that we engage with the public, and that we'd like to have that subsequent public meeting through the site plan control process. But also Rick and Heather are a part of this community, and they're happy to hear your concerns and talk to you about them. And you're also welcome to reach out to me directly as well if you have further questions and comments. But for now, I will conclude my portion of the presentation and turn it back to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Is there any other representative of the applicants that wish to speak today? Pardon? Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Well, we can now move on to the public comments, starting with our Zoom participants who registered in advance with the clerk to confirm they would be speaking. You will have a maximum of 5 minutes to provide your comments. We ask that once the first speaker has presented, any subsequent speakers limit their remarks to new concerns or comments that have not already been addressed or raised. This will ensure that we all have unique and distinct comments are heard and that this discussion remains focused. So we're looking to move things along and get everybody's ideas and comments, but if we start getting repetition, then it's going to slow the process down. So if you can pay attention to your speaker before you, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you. We'll now start with, I believe the first name on our list is Brian Gorman. Are you on Zoom, Brian, and do you still wish to speak? Brian Gorman.
I'm here.
Do you wish to speak still, sir?
Yes.
Okay, you have 5 minutes starting now, sir.
Okay, do you want questions or you just want comments?
We're looking for your comments today, sir, at the public meeting.
Okay. My first comment is the difference between the initial notification and the notification that came out today. One says it is TC 17 with an H, and the one that came out today is TC 22 with an H. I don't know the difference between the two. However, when I look at the map on each notice, the notice that came out today is for 105 hectares. The notice that came out before was for 65 hectares. So are we rezoning all of Mr. Rump's property or just the area where the spa is going to go? That's my comment. Question, if somebody's got an answer, I'd appreciate it. It just seems to be a little bit of a slip up or a slide in kind of thing. that somebody may not notice.
Well,
So-
sir, we will definitely take a look. Oh, Kristen is going
I'll
to be
just
able
speak to the technical error in the actual notice. So yes, in the notice, it said tourism exception 17, but that was for the interim provision. And then we looked at it further. It's actually supposed to be tourism exception 22 and holding. And then when that holding comes out, then it would fall into the tourism commercial exception zone. So it was just a clerical error, but it's the zoning still remains the same, unchanged, like the purpose, it's just the exception zone is different. And we are only looking at rezoning a portion of the lands. We're not rezoning the entirety of Mr. Rump's
Well,
property.
then could we perhaps change that notification and officially launch it to people so they know what is exactly going to be zone changed? That's quite a bit of property just to say, okay, it was a mistake. It's quite a bit of property. So I'll leave that with you. I have another comment.
Go ahead, sir.
That in July of 2021, there was a flood. The beaver dam that holds Stones Lake back from flowing into Grassy Bay was too high. The lake flooded. People complained about their docks being underwater. So the ministry office in Pembroke issued a permit to destroy the beaver dam. That happened. The lake dropped 3 feet. What intention can the hotel have if this happens again? I mean, I don't think that beaver dam has changed at all. It still seems to be the main block between Grassy Bay and the lake. It's not navigable. It's just a beaver dam. And if that dam pops again, the lake is going to drain, and they're taking out 200,000 liters per day. That's up to 1 million a week, I believe, if my math is correct. That will certainly leave a dry lake bed. And I don't see any what should I say, contingency plans if something like that should happen. The whole lake has been ignored in this because it's not part of the zoning, although it is part of the property. So, there has to be some contingencies looking after the lake, and flooding and that sort of thing is one of my big aches. The other ache is that we've got sewage outlet flowing into the lake, according to the diagrams. It's called outlet number 4. Now, if they clean up around the hotel, most places would perhaps use a pressure washer to scrub off the bricks and that kind of stuff. If that is all being flushed into the lake, what kind of garbage are we going to get floating there? Paper cups? Anything else that isn't filtered out? It's just an open sewer going into the lake. So I think that that's something that should be really considered because it's an environmental issue. And really, we don't want to destroy that poor little lake that's 4 kilometers long, at the best, a football field wide, and very, very slow, fed from a spring. So how long is it going to take that lake to recover from?
I'll ask you to sum up, please, Mr. Gorman, your 5 minutes.
That was it. My bell rang. I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gorman. I'm now looking for Candace Stewart. Candace, are you still on the Zoom, and do you still wish to speak?
Candace never joined.
Candace never joined. Never mind, Candace. We will now move on to Mark. Is it Ether?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, do you wish to speak still?
Yes, I do.
Yes, please go ahead.
I think mine is with respect to the notice period. I am a seasonal landowner, cottage owner on Stones Lake, and I understand I think they did a great job explaining the notification that it only needs to be 120 meters, but on this magnitude of a project and the the fact that it's located on Stones Lake, how the residents of Stones Lake were not notified. I find it funny that I got a tax bill in the mail and this was not put in it while you guys were doing this. So I got notification from my neighbor. People aren't on social media. Everybody's not on social media. I know you tried to put it out, but in my opinion, this should have been put out to the residents of Stone Lake. So that's my first thing. I think my second comment is, I think Ms. McQuaid, you've done a great job outlining the size of the project relative to the size of the lake, but an overview of a 5-story building on a lake has no real impact as a lake view of something of that magnitude on the size of the lake. That building is much bigger. From a comparison standpoint, let's take a look at Calabogie Peaks in that regard, right? I mean, the size of what's going on the lake compared to what is already on the lake and what is designated on the lake is concerning for the residents of the lake. Those are my two opinions. I think people didn't get plenty of notice. I got this literally on Monday I think it was Thursday last week by my neighbor saying that they got a hand delivered, or I don't know how they got the notice, but I think this is a miss on the township side for notification. I understand the bylaw, but the size of the project, this is not just a house going or a cottage being built on the lake. Those are my comments.
Thank you, and thank you for taking time out today to speak to us. We will now move on to, I think it's Gino Sauve?
Yes.
Gino, if you wish to speak, sir.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you for hearing me out today. I just heard of this at the beginning of the week also. But my main concern, I think, is I sent out I don't know what I called it, but a council submission today just for general questions. So I'm going to try to sum it up here. My concern is the lake. I'm not sure of how many cottages are on the lake. I estimated it at 40 cottages, and we might be drawing 30,000 liters of water per day. And now that I see that it might be 200,000 liters a day, we're going to need to be pumping water from somewhere. So if we go and get wells drilled down, and for whatever reason, all of the residents on Stones Lake, if the resort's well is lower than ours, what assurances or what mitigation or risk mitigation do we have for all of the wells if they go dry as a resident on Stones Lake? Because if we're higher and they're pumping lower, we're in a situation. So that's one of my concerns. Okay, hold on a second. I want to make sure too that if we do go ahead and approve this without having things, all of the studies approved, what assurances do we have that, let's say if they start building or moving ahead towards, are they allowed to start building for one? But are we going to be putting the municipality and the taxpayers at risk if ever we make a mistake as a municipality and then they sue the municipality for millions of dollars because they went ahead and spent money on development and such things? So are we comfortable moving forward with these issues without them being fully resolved? That's my only concern, is to make sure that we have the studies in place and that the wells aren't going to be affected, and the fire stations, if they're all volunteer firefighters, and we don't have the fire trucks to accommodate the 5 or 6 story building. And if we do get a fire in the hotel, will we be able to contain it, right? And are we going to lose the whole forest? because the infrastructure is just not there. So my comment there is, I don't know how and if the fire chief had concerns, but there's a lot of questions that would need to be answered before giving. I'm not sure of the process if you guys give a permit and then are they allowed to start working? That's basically my question. I just don't want, I'm looking at the notes when Christine was talking, and we have assurances that there's certain sections that need to be provided for the ministry and all that kind of stuff. But I just want to make sure that the lake is protected. And I respect Heather and Rick for having a great project like this. I just don't want to be affected as being a resident on that lake. Okay? It's just to protect the lake. And we're saying we're going to be away from the lake, but if we're pumping wells and pumping cleaning stations, well, that's right next to the lake. That's all I have to say, I guess.
Thank you, sir. And you're extremely prompt. You only had 2 seconds left. You must have had a timer going.
No, I didn't, but that's good.
You're very good at that.
Thank you.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Thank you.
Is there anyone else on Zoom that wishes to provide comments, particularly related to new concerns or comments that have not already been raised? If so, I would ask that you please raise your hand in order to be identified, and then identify yourself, and you will be called upon to speak. Robin, I'm going to ask for your eyes on your screen because they're really small over there. Well, I see somebody's hand.
Yeah, I see a Ken waving it. His name's Ken.
Ken, is it?
Yes,
Can I get a last name, Ken?
Timmons.
Go ahead then, sir.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to say clearly, this is not anti-development, it's not anti-tourism. We understand the value of economic diversification in rural municipalities. Our concern is about sequencing, feasibility, and risk. To assess the potential scope of the rezoning application requires a precise and complete proposal, including all studies fully completed and all planning documents fully documented. Because as you can see, we're dealing with new documents as of today. After reviewing the February 12th public meeting report, it is evident that several foundational technical issues remain unresolved. Yet the application is being advanced for zoning approval in principle. As noted in the report, design and supporting documents for this application seem to be in flux. This makes it a moving target for public to review and comment. For example, it seems like the size and scope of the hotel has been changed, yet no supporting documents changed. However, those discussions belong in a redesign submission and do not resolve the fundamental issue of prematurity of the zoning application. This is where we believe council needs to pause. Service is not confirmed. The report acknowledges detailed hydrogeological studies are still required. Test wells, long-term groundwater monitoring are outstanding. Fire and protection and suppression capacity requires further review. Storm and sewer designs remain conceptual. These are not minor refinements. They speak to the core of feasibility. A 200, 100, I don't know how many room hotel, spa, complex, cabin, distillery, common communal services will generate significant water demand and sewage load. Before zoning is approved, council should confirm a long-term aquifer sustainability, confirm the nitrate and phosphate impacts, confirm a fire flow capacity for what was a 36-meter building, which is now, I guess, 24. Confirm the lake has environmental capacity for the scale of a development as far as these can be seen. These answers do not currently exist. The height increase is significant, even at 24. Parking lots are massive. The original proposal requested an increase and it now been changed. I can forget that. Yet no mention of the capacity of the hotel has been adjusted for this, that we saw. I guess it was just today. This is not a minor variance. It changes the skyline, fire suppression requirements, visual impacts on Stones Lake, the character of the area permanently. Before the levels of height increase is approved, there should be visual impact analysis, confirmation of emergency response capability, clear policy statements deviating so that existing rural build forms expectations. Parking lot impacts, surface runoff caused by a large parking lot. Shoreline and water protection must come first. Yes, there is the 30-meter setback from the high water mark. Also, then there is a possibility need to increase this setback for this particular large scale resort. Protection of shoreline vegetation, protection of lake water, phosphorus impact. The report states studies are conceptually sound, but does not demonstrate a lake capacity study, cumulative watershed impact modeling, a quality phosphorus loading budget. For a project of this scale on a sensitive inland lake, these analyses should precede zoning, not follow. Water access use. The report states it has been confirmed that no boat traffic is intended to be introduced as this part of the development proposal. A stated intention is a promise, not a guarantee, ingrained into the zoning. An intention is not binding on this or any subsequent owner.
As we found out with the track.
Industrial style uses requires compatibility review. The development includes...
I'll ask you to summarize. You've got 10 seconds left.
Closing. Council is responsible under the Planning Act to ensure decisions are consistent with the provincial planning and statement and planning and public health and safety water resources. We recommend that the municipality take on the responsibility for carrying out the studies, the feasibility studies, with the proponent covering the cost of the studies. We respectfully submit the application is not technically mature enough for a zoning approval.
Thank you very much, sir, for your comments, and they are duly noted. Thank you for your time today. Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom that wishes to speak on this matter? And then once again, I'll turn to their clerk to advise me.
We have somebody that has their hand raised, no identification though.
Okay, we have somebody with their hand raised on the Zoom button.
Yeah, that's me. Can you hear me?
And your full name and please?
Yeah, it's Joanne Bisson, 534 Mill Street, Calabogie.
Yep, Joanne, I'd ask you to put your camera on, please. So we know who we're speaking to.
Yeah, hold on a second there. I'm just driving, so
well, that's not good. I'd also ask you to pull over.
Yeah, I am doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. Trying to get my camera on. There. Camera. Hi.
Hello there. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is mostly for Gemtech, the consultant that did the environmental impacts study. What my question is.
Have you? Excuse me. I'm just going to interrupt. Are you still driving? Because if so, I do not want to be responsible for this conversation taking place.
I'm in a parking lot right now.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. So for the eastern wood peewee bird, I noticed in the report it states that it's a species of concern. It's also, as of I think it was 2024, they've made it a Schedule 1 bird as well, where the nest or the habitat is also considered classified that it cannot be touched. It cannot be destroyed in any impact whatsoever. So I was just wondering what further tests or surveys are going to be done for the bats and the eastern wood peewee bird.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments that you'd like us to look into?
No, that's all. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for taking your time and drive safely.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. I will now ask Robin, our clerk, if she can see if there's anybody else on Zoom that wishes to speak, and please don't be driving. Do we see any others, Robin?
Yeah, there's a Mark W.
Mark W. Mark W. If you can see.
Yes. Hi there. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. If you could put your camera on, please, and identify yourself, that would be great, please.
Yeah. See if this works. Oh. Okay. I'm sorry. My camera's not working at the moment. I'm gonna go so that I don't lose too much time here. My name's Mark Wagner. I'm a landowner and taxpayer on an adjacent lake, seasonal property owner. Like the previous speaker, I just received my tax bill in the mail today as well. I'm disappointed that there is no notice whatsoever on any of these proposals. We really, I'm not going to get political here, but we don't get a lot for our tax dollars right now. And I'm not being cliche by saying that. We really don't. We have fire service and that's it on the lake that I'm on. So it is a disappointment. So let me start by saying I am completely in favor of responsible and low impact development. I've been in the area for 8 years now. We spend about 5 months a year in the area. And my main concern is with the watershed. Like the previous speaker mentioned, for Stones Lake particularly, and same with the lake that I'm on, we've had significant fluctuation of water levels just in the last 6 to 7 years, up 3 feet, down 3 feet. And my biggest concern with this is that I believe the last speaker mentioned as well, and you know what, I don't think it's bad if people repeat other people here, because there's a lot of council needs to hear that there's more than one person that has more than the same issue. So the watershed, in my view, cannot support this. I'd love for the engineers and the owners to tell me that it can, but nobody can, because, and I know we've heard this already, but when I just learned of this recently, and when I skimmed some of the literature and spent an hour or so and listened to some of the presentations here, which are informative, but also which, if you're not of an engineering or a legal background, are pretty quick to try and understand everything that's going on here. But I do see snippets around water and septic demands of proposed development are not currently known, that hydrogeological surveys are preliminary, will be had at a later date. Further refinements of studies are needed. These are all things I've heard in this meeting. And like the previous speaker just said, this is extremely disappointing. You're about to make a major decision on zoning with having very little information. And I say that from the perspective of, like I said, I'm on an adjacent lake. There's also a property owner there that owns a significant amount of land, I believe 100 acres or so. And you're going to set a big precedent here by potentially approving zoning for what is a major project on a very small lake. If this was happening somewhere in the Calabogie, proper Calabogie Lake, I could see the reasonableness of it and whatnot. But it frankly shocks me to see that the owners are putting such a major development on such a small lake, which will impact not just Stones Lake, but others in the area as well, based on the watershed and based on how these lakes are connected and spring fed. So those are my comments. I'm not opposed to development. I think this needs to be looked at much closer and for the impact and the reasonableness of the size of this development. It's a very ambitious project, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak at this forum.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for taking time to join us today. Robin, do we have anybody else that you can see on Zoom that's looking to speak?
I don't see any more hands, no.
Okay, calling once, anybody? Twice on Zoom? Called 3 times. Thank you. We will now, if there are no additional speakers on Zoom, I will move forward with in-person comments at this time. Does anyone wish to speak in relation to this amendment? If so, can you please raise your hand when called? When you're invited, please come forward, state your name, address for the record. You will have a maximum of 5 minutes to provide your comments. We ask that once the first speaker has presented, any subsequent speakers limit their remarks to new concerns or comments that have not already been raised. This will ensure that we have a unique, distinct comments are heard and the discussion will remain focused. Do we have anybody that wishes to speak? Please raise your hand. Please come forward to the microphone, turn it on, and state your name and address, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Powell, and I am at 11790A Lanark Road. My property is that little circle that Rump's land goes around. First of all, I do want to say I am not against development. I worked several years for Calabogie Lodge, watched them develop. I've also worked for Calabogie Peaks and watched them develop. Both of them have done very good jobs at what they've done. My concern with this project is the size of it. It is a very massive project that will demand a high level of water. They'll have two sources. They'll have groundwater and they'll have the lake water. Both those options will affect my property. The lake water does run by my property. It comes down from a waterfall and into a large pond and a stream that's 30 meters from my well. If that lake gets polluted, my well will get polluted. If they drain too much water out of that ground, my well will go dry. That is that part on that. On the lake side, my biggest concerns for the environmental aspect of everything is blue-green algae bloom. If that lake gets that, it is destroyed. So will my well. Further on, once that happens, this water does reach Calabogie Lake, which is one of our biggest assets at the moment. It could be affected as well. Some of the reports that have been done, they look good. However, there's a lot of misconception in them. First of all, I want to point out in one of the reports is that there is a waste management system storage yard located at 11812 Lanark Road, Calabogie, which is registered to Wilford Price Trucking, which is my brother, and I'm speaking on behalf of. He does not have that. He is a sand and gravel. You can get sand, gravel, stone, but you cannot dump waste on this property. So that is a very large misconception. Another thing in this report is it stating that Stones Lake is not a sensitive lake. What makes a sensitive lake is the fact of population and the usage of that lake. This lake has always been private land. I am very familiar with this land. I was born on this property, 1971. My parents were on this property since the early 60s. My uncle bought the property, and it was a school from 1850 to 1950. My piece of property has been in existence for a very long time, and I'm hoping that this township will protect it in making sure all these reports that are needed is done. Another big concern I have is the fact, again, I have before, many years ago, it was a Goldman Steel that owned it. We were, as children, allowed to travel all over it. We're very familiar with the land. There is a lot of wetland in that area. The one thing I'll tell you, you won't want to be in that bush April, May, June. The bugs are going to be so bad. So what are they going to do? They are going to spray. That will contaminate the environmental protection plan areas and wetlands. Sure, they'll stay the 30 meters behind, but it will get in there. It will also get into that lake, which will hence affect it severely. Another thing I would like to, as well for spraying, is the ticks. I stopped going into the bush 5 years ago. The ticks are phenomenal. They're going to have to spray. It's inevitable. So that will not protect this land. The large lot of land, for that size of land to be commercial tourism, you're giving them a blank check to do what they want in the future. Calabogie Lodge started out as a little fishing hut with a bar and a restaurant and 10 motel units. Today stands 45 2 to 3 bedroom condos on 5 acres at the most. Please take in consideration, and I thank you for your time, of the size of this project, the size of the land, and there is a lot more I could say, but my time is up.
Thank you.
And I thank you for your time.
And thank you for coming out today and spending time with us. Thank you. You can leave it on because somebody else, I know this gentleman had his hand up. Go ahead, sir, if you just identify yourself and.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jason Bird. I'm a neighbor at 11765 Lanark Road. I moved here 5 years ago, a retired Ottawa firefighter after a critical injury. And I just want to speak on behalf of meeting Rick and Heather initially when I moved here, and their utmost respect for the community and the fact that they always put they always consider what's best for the community and what's best for the lake. It's always been important to them. I wanted to mention that this type of project absolutely is exactly what Calabogie needs. You know, it reflects greatly on it, or it accents, you know, a golf course, a racetrack, Calabogie Peaks. If you look at Tremblant, it kind of mirrors what's going on up there. And I hear a lot of people, you know, complaining about things that, things that are up to you guys to determine. And I just wanted to say that as a part of my recovery, this type of facility is greatly needed for not only residents, but for people, Canadians that need a place to go. And Calabogie is a destination that people come to, you know, rest and recover. So I just want to just pass on my messages in support of this project.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking your time, and thank you for your service on the fire department. It's greatly appreciated. Do we have anybody else that wishes to speak today? We have a gentleman at the back. If you come forward and just identify yourself, please.
Thanks, honestly. Hi, Rob. Council, it's John Foster, and I'm at 709 Stones Lake Road. A lot of good information today, a lot of interesting comments, and what I would say is one of the slides said that there's no recreational use of the lake. However, what that slide really says is there's no currently planned recreational use of the lake, because the zoning that we're being asked to consider approving is in fact permits that. And I'm looking at it and thinking, everybody's mentioned how small Stones Lake is. It's about 4% the size of Calabogie Lake. So if you have people going there in their cabins with their paddle boards and their kayaks on the top of their cars and that, pretty hard to say you can't just walk them down the lake and put them in there. But believe me, it's extremely crowded in there if you got a few hundred people swimming and playing in the lake in a tiny, tiny space. So that's the one consideration. The second thing, which is really actually, I think, more important, I read all of the studies, and there's been a huge amount of work done to determine, apparently the project has 2 wells. There's a huge amount to determine what the flow rates of the wells will be and how deep the aquifer will have to go and how much water table and blah, 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 and how many milligrams per liter of potassium and nitrate and everything. But the simple fact of the matter is the vast majority, because as I understand the plan, the 2 wells will serve the cabins. The vast majority of the 200,000 liters of water for the hotel will be drawn from the lake. And I've seen nothing that says that it's been studied how much water can be safely drawn from the lake without adversely affecting the level of the lake and the habitat for the quality of life for the lake and everything that lives in it. And for me, in the summer, the lake goes down by a foot every summer, and that's just from evaporation. And I look at that, it should not be hard. As a matter of fact, it'd be relatively easy to figure out how much water can come out of the lake without adversely affecting it, because everything flows from the lake into Calabogie Lake, and it's only got one point of exit. So you just measure what the output is there at that point of exit. That's how much outflow you can have without affecting the lake. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Somebody should study that and come up with a definitive answer. And then the final thought I had is everything that leaves that compound is going to go into Calabogie Lake, into Grassy Bay Swamp. And while Stones Lake is not a special area or something, whatever it's called, Grassy Bay is. And apparently it's 780 meters from Grassy Bay, and eventually that water will go into Calabogie Lake. And we're talking about the effluent from all of the sewage, the fertilizers and stuff that'll be used on the lawns and grass, and all of the output from the spa chemicals and all of that sort of stuff will flow into that water. And I just wonder if anybody's concerned about the impact of that on the Grassy Bay, and if that has been studied, because it's right there, right in close proximity. And my main concern, though, is the level of the lake and how much it should be easy to determine what is a safe draw from that lake to not adversely affect it. That's basically it. Well,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today. Is there anyone else here today that wishes to speak? Yes, come forward and just...
Hi, my name is Samantha Shapers. I live off of 220 Wilson Farm Road, so I'm pretty close to everything. I just want to make a comment because everybody said everything what they needed to say. Is from my personal experience of what we experience on the land is one big one is a fire. Forest fire is no joke. A lot of people are very careless. Last summer, all summer, they said bonfire is banned, but I've seen it. People have bonfire. It happened. It's just the way it is. When we were living there, we were waiting for construction, so we were living in a trailer. There was smoke. We couldn't see what's in front of us. There was smoke everywhere, and we're like, oh my God. And we're the only one on that road at the time that my husband had to call the firefighter at midnight, and it took them 45 minutes to arrive. So imagine if my husband wasn't up that night, we would have woke up to a forest fire. We would have lost our home. So that's a scary part for me with that many people in the wood being careless. So it's not so much on the resort, it's more of a Calabogie community and enforcement, like what you guys are gonna do about it. We're gonna need more firefighter, we're gonna need police, we're gonna need bylaw officer, a lot more, because 45 minutes is too long. Same with the police, if any emergency, it's gonna take 45 minutes. That's very long, so if you're gonna put 1,000 people on one property, and then there's an emergency, there's something got hurt or whatever, there's a fire, that's a lot for enforcement to handle, to take care of it. We're very short staffed. So that was my biggest concern, especially with the water and the forest. Like the fire is, it can go just like that. And I don't want to lose my home. So we work really hard for our house. So that was my biggest concern. And yeah, and the person, she brought a good point about ticks and bugs. The bugs are really bad. So they are definitely going to spray stuff because a lot of people are going to complain. Every time I have people over with the black fly season, they complain so much how bad it was. And I remember the place in Cornwall, the bug was so bad, they had to treat that land and it affected their water. So it does happen. And I don't have a lot of trust in people not cutting corner and not doing certain things. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you for your time today. Thank you. Do we have any additional comments from the gallery here today? There are none seen. Okay, we will then, if we do not have any other comments, then I will, are there any comments from council or any further comments from the applicant? Yes, come forward. Identify yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Heather Crawley, and I'm one of the applicants of this proposal. Apologies for my back to everyone. I just wanted to say a few words, just want to introduce myself. I'm Rick's wife, and we just wanted to share that we know that change is never easy, especially in a place we all call home. Rick and I are residents on Stones Lake. We are super passionate about that lake and we care deeply about it. We wanted to make sure that the residents know that we've heard their concerns. We read each and every letter that was submitted, so we are grateful for that. And we just wanted to share with the community that we know that this community was built on people who genuinely care about Calabogie, and that's why we feel it's equally important that as the leads on this project, that we're local, that we're resident and we understand very much what's special to this place, and it is top of mind for us. You have our commitment to do every study that is required, and we will be compliant. Rick and I are very transparent individuals, so we welcome to continue this dialogue. This is just the beginning of a very long process, as we've already indicated. So our commitment is to continue to be transparent and engage with the community. One of our plans is to have an engagement and communication plan so that we can engage the community along the way. This isn't, again, as I said, a one and done discussion. This is the beginning of many. A key part for us is to bring the local history into this project and weave it into the design. There are many, many amazing stories in this township that we want to incorporate, whether that's the trade on the Madawaska, it's the marble mine in Tatlock Quarry, it's the 3 sawmills on Stones Lake itself that we want to really make sure is present. The other thought that I wanted to share with the community is that our procurement approach, a key principle for us is community first. So if you are a local artist, we want to hear from you. If you make honey, syrup, make furniture, we want to hear from you. If you're a local farmer with produce and proteins that can go into the kitchen, we want to hear from you. So we look forward to continuing this dialogue and ongoing with the community. I wanted to thank everyone that's here today, everyone that's online, everyone that submitted comments. We respect those comments, whether you're in favor or not. And just rest assured that we want to continue the dialogue. And just a final thank you to other residents on Stones Lake. We know that this isn't easy. These conversations aren't easy. Thank you to those who stopped us in town to ask a question, came to our home to at least initiate dialogue. This is where you can have good conversation, and to those who called us up just to chat. And we look forward to continued engagement with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today. Is there any comments from council at this time? Oh, Councillor Thompson.
I just want to say how much I appreciate the way this process has been and the way everything was explained to us. This is our first time as council where we faced a major rezoning, but it's also the first time in decades for this community to face that, and things have changed or they're new to people. So I'm just really happy with the way it is. We really do want to hear, and it's good that Rick and Heather also want to hear, because it's ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from council at this time? There are none seen. If there are no further comments from the public, council, or the applicant, please note that any person wishing to receive the notice of decision regarding the application being considered must send an email request to the Township office immediately following this meeting. In all cases, said request must be received prior to the date of the decision of council on this matter. This therefore completes the public meeting process for these applications today. Council will give careful consideration to all the comments received and on the applications before it. I want to thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank everybody online and for the community as a whole taking such great interest in this. And I now declare this public meeting closed at 4:44 p.m. Thank you very much. Don't forget to turn your phones back on and drive safe.